Who down to you, Saints fans, as we have to change up the format a little bit. Thursday night game coming up, meaning we got to discuss the upcoming matchup before we even really can get deep into a review. And this is a big matchup, not just because it's an NFC opponent, but because quite literally the New Orleans Saints hold their own destiny in their hands. And as we talked about a couple weeks ago, they kind of had to win a minimum of 4 of their last 5 to have a real shot at taking this division. Now, I will say they got help by the Carolina Panthers beating the Atlanta Falcons, which was unexpected, dropping Atlanta down to 6-8. But Tampa went and beat the Green Bay Packers, putting both New Orleans and them at 7-7. And then looking at the Week 16 matchups coming up, you got the New Orleans Saints going to LA, playing, in my opinion, the NFC quarterback who's the most underrated quarterback this season, playing at a very high level in Matthew Stafford. And then you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars going to Tampa to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Atlanta hosts the Colts. So everybody in the NFC South that matters for this particular reason are playing teams with either a winning record or are at 500. You can argue, I guess, that New Orleans has the quote-unquote easier option there, playing the LA Rams, who are 7-7, but I think that's very misleading. They have won 4 of their last 5 games, with the only loss coming against the Baltimore Ravens, and that was a loss by 6 points. This is another team heading in the right direction who are getting hot at the right time, just like the New York Giants were. They're a more talented team. So you're going to have to be very careful about your expectations and what you want to see New Orleans do. If there was a game that they could lose, this is the one, but then they would have to beat Atlanta and have to beat Tampa to wrap up the season to seal the division. Welcome everybody, Who Dat. Hope you're having an amazing week so far. We're going to cover all this and more here on the show. Nikki DeFish, good to see you. Louisiana Stepper 318, TJ, one of our moderators in the house. Aaron Alvarez, good to see you. Chemo Slice, Brian W. II, Steve B, Mac Tazino, Gerald Stevenson, Rainey, everybody else. Come on into Who Dat Nation. Let's get started. We're going to start with the injury report for this game so that y'all know where we're at as of today. Again, this is a short week, so Tuesday, getting an injury report, this matters more than normal. Kendre Miller, Chris Olave, Cameron Jordan, Carl Granderson, and Peyton Turner were all limited participants, while Ryan Ramczyk, Lonnie Johnson, Isaiah Foskey, DNP. Now, real quick, I do expect to still see Ryan Ramczyk in this game, believe it or not. I know Landon Young got a lot of snaps, but I think that Ramczyk should be back, but we'll wait and see. But no guarantees. No guarantees. Then you've got the Los Angeles Rams. Here's what they've got. Tutu Atwell, full participation coming back from concussion. Ronnie Rivers with a knee injury. Kilo Witherspoon, yep, he's still in the league. And Rob Havenstein. Now here's who they do not have participating. Trey Tomlinson and Joe Noteborn are the DNPs for the LA Rams. And I'll admit, I am far more worried about the LA Rams than I was the New York Giants, and I went into the Giants game saying this is definitely a game that they could lose. The Giants do not match up very well with New Orleans in terms of Dennis Allen versus Sean McVay. Now, that doesn't mean I'm just trying to just be all doom and gloom. I'm simply saying that historically, this is a team that has moved very well against Dennis Allen's defense, and that's just the truth of it. If you go into their franchise encyclopedia, and you look at the head-to-heads between these teams, it has been I would say, enjoyable set of games. I wouldn't say that, necessarily all enjoyable if you're a Saints fan, but go back to some of the most recent contests for New Orleans. You did have last year that win, 27-20 in New Orleans, but before that, you had 2 straight losses, including that playoff game that we prefer not to talk about. But you also had the loss in 2019. And then regular season, you won but lost in the playoffs. This is a team that has had success since Dennis Allen's been here, 2017. The Los Angeles Rams won as well. So this is a team that has been able to score points. Now, the big key is in their matchups against Dennis Allen, the Los Angeles Rams since 2017 have scored a minimum of 20 points. And that was actually the lowest point last year. They're averaging close to 26, 27 points per game when facing the New Orleans Saints in this defense. Those are going to be numbers that you're going to want to keep in mind. The New Orleans Saints are going to have to find a way to slow things down, take advantage of a Rams offense that isn't as good as it was in the past, but is still top 10 in both scoring and yards allowed, and take advantage of a defense for the Rams that is not as good as it's been in the past. Aaron Donald has finally started to hit that wall, just as Cameron Jordan has, and sucks to say that because both of those guys are amazing players, but it's the truth. They've both started to hit the wall. And if you go into the advanced stats, if you know what their DBs are doing and how they're doing in coverage, you'll find that, well, there's been a couple opportunities to pick on some guys. For example, talking about starters, you got linebacker in Michael Holt, who has given up 116 quarterback rating when targeted. That's an opportunity if you are Alvin Kamara. Jordan Fuller, one of their starting DBs, giving up 3 touchdowns and 103 QB rating. Rush Yeast, who has operated as a starter at various points this game, has played 14 games for them, giving up 130 quarterback rating. Now, their starting corners, just to go ahead and keep everything true, Ahkello Witherspoon is giving up a 60 quarterback ratings. He's actually playing quite well. You also have other starters who are not playing as poorly as some of the numbers that I'm shooting out there, but simply putting them out there that whether we're talking about Darian Kendrick or Jordan Fuller, there have been struggles in the secondary for this team. And also, just to be honest, there's been struggles from a pass rush perspective from the Los Angeles Rams. Byron Young leads the team in sacks, tied with Aaron Donald, both of them having 6, very similar to New Orleans, where both of these teams have got linebacker and then defensive lineman leading the sack totals. For those that don't remember the New Orleans Saints, 7.5 for the recently extended Carl Granderson, and then 6.5 for Demario Davis with 3 games left on the docket. Both of these teams have put up 30 sacks, and yes, both of these teams have had issues doing it consistently, with New Orleans getting 7 sacks in this most recent game, but you've also not seen a lot of consistent sacks from them. So you've got a lot of things to look at here when you talk about the opportunity to go after the Rams. So the number one thing I would say is when we talk about stats and we talk about, how important stats can be, pressure rate's a big deal. Matthew Stafford is being pressured over the course of the season on about 17.7% of his throws. Beyond just that, how often has he gotten sacked? What's his sack percentage? That's always the number we want to take a look at. He's been sacked 25 times with a sack percentage of 5.2%. To give you a comparison of what that means, just because not everybody has stats memorized, I completely understand that. Derek Carr has been sacked 26 times for 5.5%. So both offensive lines have had issues. While neither have been terrible, both have had issues at various points being consistent when it comes to pass protection. Now, here's one big difference. Derek Carr has thrown 16 touchdown passes to 7 interceptions, whereas Matthew Stafford has thrown 21 to 9. And I'd also argue that Stafford's been dealing with just as much of a problem of injury and wide receiver talent as New Orleans has had, with Michael Thomas missing and everything, and yet they've still found ways to have success. With Puka having, that young, I know a lot of people probably saw a lot of his highlight tapes earlier in the year. He's already over 1,000 yards, and now they've returned with Cooper Kupp. Both of those guys doing a really good job. The only thing is they don't really do well in the red zone. Neither of them really have the body type to dominate in the red zone, so both of them are limited to 4 TDs. If there is a positive, I'm curious what Chad thinks, if there's a positive about the New Orleans Saints as of late, they finally have started to get semi-consistent with their red zone play. I know. We don't want to give any accolades out to the NFL red zone folks. Here's the truth of it, ladies and gentlemen. The New Orleans Saints have started to do a little bit better than what they were doing before in the red zone. It's not amazing. However, shock you numbers coming. Of the quarterbacks who have thrown touchdowns in the red zone, this is getting, I know I'm not putting Derek Carr in the upper echelon, but you got Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen. So there's top five. Then Brock Purdy, Goff, Herbert, Stafford, Tua, Baker, Derek Carr. He's the 12th player in throwing TDs inside the red zone with no interceptions in that run. Red zone passing. So you've seen an improvement there. Is it good? No. I'm not ready to just go in and start passing out accolades like, hey, you guys and gals are doing a fantastic job in the red zone. But we have seen in the past 5 or 6 games an improvement in the red zone offense. It's not amazing, but it is an improvement. And I think that is worth bringing up, and that's definitely worth mentioning as something that hopefully is a trend that moves into the right direction for New Orleans. Another thing to keep in mind is actually the New Orleans Saints have had some success rushing inside the 10 if they've stuck with it. Now, the key is, do all of these things actually stick? Good to see you, Godfather. I would say that the Rams are a better version of the New York Giants. The New York Giants were a team that were trending in the right direction that they had called on pretty late, and it was doubtful for them to make the playoffs, especially with the lackluster quarterback play of Danny DeVito. Matt Stafford is not playing like Danny DeVito. I would argue that Matt Stafford is playing better than a lot of the guys around him, but he's limited by offensive line and talent along the wide receiver group. One thing that I noticed going back and watching the Commanders game is the Commanders coverage is simply not near as good as New Orleans is. So there are opportunities to pressure Stafford. But I do have to say this. I know I didn't put out a film study on today. It's been very busy. It's the holidays. I do apologize for that. But just a quick FYI, there's a lot that's kind of misleading about the Saints' 7 sacks against the New York Giants. They did not pass off the twist stunt game very well. They struggled with it, in fact, and New Orleans made it to the point to really pick on the left guard and center, the left guard being Justin Pugh, who came out of retirement to play and start for them the past 9 games, has really struggled, and they took advantage of those. I do like some of the changes they still made, by the way. It's not all negative. Number one, Cameron Jordan is no longer out there on third down pass rush situations a lot. They are making sure to take advantage of a guy like Zach Bond and use him in those situations. It only took 4 years to figure out that he actually has the athletic ability to, use those ghost moves, bend the rep, has the hip and ankle flexion to attack the pass as a speed rusher on the outside. They use it to good advantage. I love to see that. Hopefully that translates to other games. Could be a little bit too late, but still, it's something worth noting. And Zach Bond, even though he's only got 1 sack, has certainly done pretty well because if you look at his quarterback hits, he's registered a couple. And in the past couple games, his pressure numbers have also increased. So even though the New Orleans Saints still have Cameron Jordan as the number 1 pressure guy, Zach Bond is now up to 6 pressures. And basically all that's just coming this past game. So hopefully they're finally just like letting it click in their mind that they can use that as a weapon going forward. Brian Brzee, Tano Passion, both are now tied at 3.5 sacks each in that interior spot. Demario Davis has 6.5 sacks, Cameron Jordan with 2, and then Carl Granderson with 7.5, possibly getting his first 10-sack season this year. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, Godfather says Rams have given up the fewest fantasy points to pass-catching running backs this season. They'll destroy us on a short week. Carr won't finish the game. Says Rams win 31-9. I will admit that the short week concerns me, but at the same time, that goes both ways. And the Rams are coming off a very physical game against the Commanders. And while they obviously came out the better of the two in that matchup, it wasn't an easy win. And if you look at how the Commanders were able to get pressure on Matthew Stafford, they in fact got 3 sacks on Stafford. And Stafford did not have his most efficient game of the season. That's kind of what you're looking for. Now, Matthew Stafford has not thrown an interception in 4 games. Matthew Stafford has not been throwing a lot of turnovers. He's actually been very reliable as of late. But part of that has been the fact that this team for LA has been winning time of possession. They've been building in some early leads and then playing with that and taking advantage of that, similar to how we talked about the New Orleans Saints needing to do that to be a successful team in this league. Los Angeles came into or hosted the Commanders, who are a 4-10 team, by the way, built a 13-0 halftime lead, and then I wouldn't say played it safe, but they certainly gave their defense an opportunity to operate a certain way, and they weren't under similar pressures. But if you go into some of the things that they have lost, games where they have not been able to build that early lead, for example, take the Baltimore Ravens game. That at halftime was a 20-17 game. And yet Baltimore kept it close. The Rams weren't able to dictate it. And the Baltimore Ravens are certainly a better team than the New Orleans Saints have been this year. But that's something to keep in mind. Take a look at how they lost against Green Bay. Green Bay is the one who 7-3 at halftime had the lead. And without that big lead for the Rams, the defense was suspect and they were able to be taken advantage of. So there is a formula to beat the Los Angeles Rams. Even though they are still a very talented team, they are not the same team that went to the Super Bowl years ago. And I love what New Orleans has been doing statistically and on film recently. So what I mean by that is let's talk about the guys in coverage, right? Paulson Adebo has been fantastic. He's currently allowing a 54.8 quarterback rating. The guy honestly deserves a Pro Bowl nod. He has 4 interceptions. He's not allowed a touchdown and a 54 quarterback rating. If he doesn't get a Pro Bowl nod, well, that's just simply ridiculous. And then people have brought up Yiadom quite a bit. And I will say that with him being the backup, teams do like to target him. But he's only giving up a 70 rating, also having an interception. But the completion percentage when targeting him is 42.3%. So he's actually done a very good job filling in and playing in that role. Now, if you're curious, the player who has given up the most touchdowns this season, technically it's the Honey Badger and Lonnie Johnson. And safeties giving up touchdowns is a little bit iffy, but we can recall a couple of those, and we know that they've happened. But I would say that the secondary is not the concern for New Orleans. The concern is, can you replicate that pressure that you were able to show? Because I don't think that the Rams offensive line is going to fall prey to a lot of the twist and stunt games that the New York Giants did. But something to think about. M. Dot says, I didn't like that tweet Alante put out saying they're not worried about ticket sales. This is us versus them attitude, ain't it? I'll be honest. I don't think the players should be worried about ticket sales either. That's not their job, nor should it be their focus. Their focus should be out to go and win games and let management with Ms. Gale and everybody handle all of that. I do think that part of that problem stems from we have way too many people in this community, not accusing anybody in the Hudak Confessional community, but there are way too many people who are coming at players and saying stuff like this. And honestly, we just kind of need, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a jerk here. Keep your mouth shut. If you are one of those folks, leave the players alone, let them do their job. You have an issue with how Mickey's running things, and I think there's very legitimate reasons to have issues on how Mickey's running things. Players and tickets and the dome, leave them out of it. Focus on the people that need to be complained about. P. Carmichael, Mickey Loomis. Complain about Dennis Allen. Leave the players out of it, let them do their job. Aaron Alvarez says, I thought Cam got benched for Baum, but I didn't know he got hurt. Zach looked good, though. Quick and a compliment to Granderson. So you do have Cameron Jordan playing through a little bit of an injury, but at the same time, I think they see the value of subbing him out in those pure pass rush situations. And if you go through the game of just kind of like how they were playing later on, it's like if you go to, say, I don't know, the fourth quarter, and you look at how New Orleans started really operating. One, they started using the twist stunt game extremely heavily. They became very reliant on the twist stunt game. Now, you are right that when you lost Cameron Jordan, you had Zach Bond come in, and I love what Cameron Jordan was doing on the sidelines to try to assist him in being a better player because Zach Bond is not a traditional defensive end. So he's not going to be able to win power. He's going to have to try to win with speed. Still, I thought he showed some good movement. And what I am hoping happens is seeing those type of plays leads the team to using him in more of those NASCAR packages and using him to do what he did so well in college, rush the passer. And I hate it takes an injury to make something like that happen, but I still think that it's something that New Orleans should take advantage of. He's always been a pure pass rusher. Use that to his advantage. Let him be that athlete and see where it goes. You can still put Cameron Jordan out on the field, but Zach Bond from a wide 9 and a 2-point stance is going to do a pretty good job running the arc, take advantage of it, and use Cameron Jordan as a 2-down player. I think that would be the best thing for the New Orleans Saints to do moving forward. After I watched the tape, I just sat there and saw, opportunity, especially for a defensive line that has been very anemic for most of the season. That just is what it is. DA has twisted our criticism for him as motivation for the locker room. I don't know about any of that. I mean, I've been pretty critical on DA, but I'm critical about him being a head coach. I still think that he does great things with the defense. There are flaws to Dennis Allen, to be sure. Number one, I don't trust him when it comes to drafting defensive ends, but yeah. Passignon had the game of his life. I think Passignon had a great game, but Passignon was benefiting especially a lot from picking on Justin Pugh and also the twist and stunt game. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're probably not going to see a lot of that moving forward. And you saw the Saints use a lot of varied looks, right? Second half, they started heavily stacking one side of the offensive line. They started showing a lot of A-gap pressure. They did a lot of things to throw off the rookie. But the thing is, there were opportunities there if the New Orleans Saints had not had that level of pressure. So let me give you a visual example, right? I don't tend to do this on stream very often, but because we don't have as much time with the game coming up, I want to show you this is a still shot as an example. I'll show you the play. So what you want to watch is this bottom route right here. This is on a 3rd and 10. So they're going to run basically a speed post here against this New Orleans. You're going to have basically a kind of drop down quarters coverage where you're going to match the vertical coming up on the number 3. But watch this one right here. We're going to break it outside. That is a pass Matthew Stafford's hitting for 40, 50 yards, potentially a touchdown. This is not a pass that Danny DeVito is making. Danny DeVito is just going to run away and throw it away. But that is a pass that maybe Stafford, I don't know if Stafford's doing it now, but it's definitely an NFL pass that the elites, the Mahomes, the Allens, the et ceteras, make that pass. So to be clear, there were missed opportunities for the New York Giants. And the New Orleans Saints have a better coverage unit than the Commanders. There's definitely a winnable game here, but at the same time, they have to come out and play at a very high level, which is what you just saw them do, right? You just saw them play at a very high level on an ascending team. But you've got to see it be consistent. And consistency has been the word of the year because the New Orleans Saints have yet to be consistent at anything except inconsistency. And that's fine, I guess, if you're a rebuilding team, but this is a team that still lauds itself as a playoff team. So it's something that you have to look at, have to be concerned about. But talking about Zach Ball and everything, I do want to bring up these snap counts real quick. Usually we just put these out on Twitter and everything, but your New Orleans Saints snap count, you had Zach Bond having a 34. That's 55%, much higher than you normally see from him. Carl Granderson, 82%, obviously extremely high. Cameron Jordan, 34%, really low. Obviously, the injury played into that. But Howden, Adebo, Taylor, Davis, and Honey Badger all played 100% of the defensive snaps for this team, which shows the power of that secondary, even without Marshawn Lattimore. And it definitely sucks to not have Lattimore there. We want to see more of Marshawn Lattimore. Without Marshawn Lattimore, I struggle to believe that the team will stay consistently great. Not that I'm trying to be negative, just simply being that I think that we need to see more of him before we can have any level of trust. So keep it going. Tony says, do you see Turner helping with the pass rush? If he returns in time, maybe. but I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. It's weird that Carr had his best game of the season without the top two receivers. I'm still upset that Graham has been so underused all year. Say this, Mr. Don. After watching it, I thought Carr had a really good game. I really do. It wasn't incredible, but it was a good game. And I think a big part of it is I really feel, and I've been asking around about this around the league, I feel like Ronald Curry is getting more and more involved in what this team does, right? And you can love, you can hate Derek Carr. At this point, people have kind of made their decision. But I will say this. Derek Carr performs his best when he's allowed to utilize things like play action, motion. You saw much more of that in this game than you're used to seeing. And I don't think it's a coincidence that after some of his big plays, he's going directly to Ronald Curry with excitement. All right. Now, this does not excuse some of the things that I've had as an issue with Derek Carr throughout the season. I have an issue with Derek Carr calling out Chris Olave, yelling at Eric McCoy. I've had issues with Derek Carr. But I think that you're starting to see Ronald Curry have more of an influence, and that is leading to better play calling situationally, which is now becoming a better thing for Derek Carr. How do I know it's becoming a better thing for Derek Carr? Well, just look at his past few games by comparison, right? And again, nothing that we're about to say about Derek Carr is like beautiful numbers. This is not a defense of Derek Carr. This is an example of how things are happening that you're not used to seeing. So, for example, games 1 through 4, first 4 games of the season, he threw 64% of his passes for completions, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions in 4 games. That was Derek Carr. The last 2 games, he's thrown 5 touchdowns to 1 interception, 76% completion percentage. In fact, first 4 games of the year, 64.5 completion percentage. Next 4 games of the year, 64.5% completion percentage. And then something changed starting around game 10. 70.5% completion percentage. And then most recently, in these past 2 games, 75.9% completion percentage. And it's not just about pure completion percentage, because he's also throwing more yards per attempt. His adjusted yards per attempt in the first 4 games was 5.75. Hence, everybody calling him check down Carr. 5.75, but in the past 2 games is 7.26. Over the past 6 games is 7.29. So there's had to have been some level of influential shift, whether it be Alvin Kamara's discussion, Ronald Curry's input, etc., that has improved Derek Carr's play. Now, none of the things that I'm rattling off are amazing numbers, right? He's still averaging about 220 passing yards. There are still missed opportunities on the field, but there's clearly something that has happened on this team that has become better. He has become more comfortable. The reads he's been given are better, but more importantly, I think he's simply being given the opportunity to do what works for him. And one of the things that has always worked for Derek Carr is play action. And he's always done play action really, really well. And he's been doing it the past few games. So you can't say for certain that like Pete Carmichael is no longer calling the plays. But if you look at Derek Carr, there's definitely been a shift in a better direction from how he's been playing. And hopefully that is a trend that continues. I still don't think that Derek Carr is ever a top 5 guy, but I will say that if you look at his numbers in December, how about we just do that? Let's just get rid of the games. Let's just talk about September, October, November, December, right? Because he played 3 games in September. 3 games in September, 65% completions, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions, and took 11 sacks. Okay? Now here's his numbers for December. 3 games played. So we're including a loss here. I'm not just trying to fluff the numbers by playing, the Carolina Panthers. So 3 games in that, so that includes a loss. 76%, 6 TDs, 2 interceptions, and he's only been sacked 4 times. So there's been a drastic improvement in Derek Carr over the past 3 games based on what you saw at the beginning of the year. And I think a lot of that has to do with how this offense has decided to finally change just a little bit to be a more productive and consistent unit. Derek Carr still not playing as a top 10 guy, but if you want to know where he ranks around the league, can't wait for everybody to just go ahead and get really angry because they're going to be like, oh, Rev is just fanboying for Derek Carr. Guys, I'm here for facts. And here's some of the good facts, right? Derek Carr currently ranked 16th overall in passing yards, which is about what you're paying for. 18th overall in touchdowns. That's about what you're paying for. Nothing incredible. He's the 7th best quarterback in the NFL in interception percentage thrown. So he's not turning the ball over. That's a good thing. In terms of sack percentage, in terms of how many sacks he's taking, he's got the 8th lowest amount. So while he's not doing mind-blowing, amazing, throwing 340 yards and 3 TDs, no interceptions, he is playing very efficient football. And something has clearly happened to this offense to help make some of that happen. And if you look at the New Orleans Saints' red zone success here lately, I think that has helped translate to that. Hell, people talked about the fact that he couldn't contribute in the red zone, but he had multiple red zone TD throws here recently. 13 of his touchdown throws this year have been in the red zone. And again, none of this is a defense that Derek Carr is perfect, but it does seem like the offense has finally made a shift that's needed to finally start being slightly more successful. And I want to give you one split because those who listen to the podcast remember when I said this many, many months ago, and it was shocking. And y'all went, holy crap, that's terrible. How can they manage that? Do you remember the stat that I gave out of what they were throwing completion percentage-wise inside the 10-yard line? For those that don't remember, it was 26%. Since then, that number has risen to 41%. Now, 41% is nothing to get excited about. But the key is you went from 26% through most of the season up to 41%. You had a pretty drastic improvement. You know how much you have to do in terms of how well you have to be throwing the ball to go from 26 and knock it up 15 points at the end of a year? This offense is surprisingly starting to do things a little bit well, and I think that's because some things are getting taken out of the hands of other people, a la P. Carmichael. I can't say that for certain. I'm just letting y'all know things that maybe you didn't know. Maybe you didn't know. And again, none of this is to say that he's playing as an elite quarterback, but he certainly is playing very efficient. And all of the analytics back up that he's playing better recently. And that's what you need to do if you want to have success on this team. My favorite thing that he did against, and I should probably put it in a film segment, the best play he did was arguably one of the best plays of the season. Remember the play we're talking about with Ronald Curry being so excited? Him and if you watch it, it's both Ronald Curry and Derek Carr just getting really excited about a play. Well, it's after the touchdown play to Juwan Johnson. In that play, it's a full field read setup, and you can clearly watch as Derek Carr focuses in to hold the safety in the center of the field to the left, and then immediately comes back with great timing, hits Juwan Johnson the seam, touchdown. That's what you wanted to get from Derek Carr when you signed him, but you needed somebody to draw up the type of plays that make those type of things happen. So, will Derek Carr ever be the 350-yard, 4 TD a game person that leads him to the Hall of Fame? No. But if you can get the Derek Carr that how he's playing right now to play out the rest of the season, yeah, you actually should have a little bit of faith in the offense now that you didn't have before. So, some positive. And I like being positive. I do. M. Dot says, to be fair, I'll be honest, I just don't like him. And it's completely okay to not like the guy, right? I get that. That's fine. You know, I have no problem with that, which is why I stick to film and analytics, right? Because film and analytics don't care if you're good, bad, ugly, white, brown, purple dot, nothing. All they care about is facts. And for reasons that we cannot properly say, Derek Carr is certainly playing better football. Now, here's the catch. You know who else is playing good football? Matthew Stafford. And I talk about it a lot that the best players on a team, or obviously the team that has the best chance of winning, the one whose quarterback is playing the hottest. Let's talk about what Matthew Stafford has been doing lately. So Matthew Stafford splits are pretty scary, but that's just because I feel like he's got Sean McVay, who is still a very, very good player. So let's talk about what he's been doing in recent games. How about that? That sound like a fun thing? I mean, we just did it for Derek Carr. We might as well do it here. So in the past, let's just use December as an example. In December, he is throwing 63% completion, a little bit lower than Derek Carr, actually. 8 TDs, no interceptions, but he has been sacked 5 times. 3 of those were the Commanders, though. The other 2 games, he didn't really get sacked at all, but the Commanders definitely did get to him, and that caused some of his issues. But he's playing his best ball of the season. In September, he was throwing 4 interceptions to 2 TDs. He looked really rough, only 60%. Now, one thing about him is that completion percentage for LA has not gone up because the wide receiver group for LA is not as good as it once was. And I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it because they love Cinderella stories. And Puka's been a Cinderella story. Yay, Cinderellas. But the truth is, elite receivers are needed, right? That's why you want to have guys like you really, really, really want to have guys like Chris Olave play at a high level. For example, Puka and Tyler Higbee have combined for 15 drops this season. That'll really hurt your completion percentage. That'll hurt it a lot. So, as good as they've been, hence the 1,000-yard season for Puka, you do worry about that. If you happen to be curious, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and Rashid Shaheed combined have 10 drops. Like if you took the top 4 guys for New Orleans, they have 10 drops. And that's still 5 less than the top 2 guys over there for the LA Rams. And then Tutu Atwell has 4 drops. Kyron Williams, the running back, has 4 drops out of the backfield. Cooper Kupp has only 2 drops in 10 games. There has been a problem there. The New Orleans Saints as a team have 19 drops. The Los Angeles Rams as a team have 30 drops. So this is a team going against the New Orleans Saints coverage year or coverage unit that is much better than what they just played. And they are not a reliable or as reliable unit as you saw what they were in the Super Bowl. They're just not that. And again, none of this is to talk crap about Puka because would I take Puka on my team? Absolutely. But last year, this is a LA team that went 5-12. And the year before that, they won the Super Bowl. But you tell you what, the year they won the Super Bowl, there's a lot of things that were different. For example, let's talk about drop passes. Cooper Kupp had 8 drop passes, but Tyler Higbee had 3 in the entire heckin' season. Robert Woods had 3 the entire heckin' season. Odell Beckham had none the entire heckin' season, right? This is a team that played really well. Not to mention they had a prime Cooper Kupp. And I would say that Cooper Kupp has reached a point in his career. Believe it or not, Cooper Kupp is over 30 years old. He's not getting better. That doesn't mean that you don't fear him. You definitely want to, try to cover him as much as you want. If you're a Saints fan looking for more positives about this game, let's talk about the running game. Kyron Williams is a threat to worry about, but you just shut down Saquon Barkley. And is there one of those big, scary tight ends? Well, I've been talking about Tyler Higbee, the guy with all the drops that I just talked about. He's there, but he's not the most imposing tight end that you have faced this year. And I think pressure is going to be a big thing, and coverage is going to be a big thing to win this. We'll see what actually ends up happening. Mr. Johnson, for the season, I want to see Carr around 10th, 12th in the league in most categories. He's there in some categories. Like, he's better in some categories than I would have expected. For example, turnover percentage. He's worse than I would have expected in some categories, like total yards thrown, right? So I would say Derek Carr averages out to the 16th best quarterback in the NFL as of today. He is the 13th highest paid quarterback by yearly average. So if he can have 3 really good games to end the season, then he'll be about what you paid for him. How much damage is Aaron Donald going to have up front? I'm sure Carr's already having nightly sweats. It's a great question, M. Dot. The only problem kind of is, and I'm not saying that Aaron Donald cannot have a presence, right? But Aaron Donald is no longer the Aaron Donald of old. And I don't say that offensively, but guys age. Aaron Donald is 32 years old. Aaron Donald has the lowest snap percentage this year that he's had going all the way back to 2016. They're using him less, and they're trying to use him sparingly. And yes, he can contribute. However, over the past 5 games, he has half a sack. As older players, this is why DA did the whole gas can in the lockers for the veterans. Do you have enough endurance to last in that meaty part of the season? Aaron Donald has not been that same guy. Now, I'm not trying to trash Aaron Donald because he very well could come through and just absolutely wreck New Orleans. But I am telling you that Aaron Donald is not the Aaron Donald that was Defensive Player of the Year multiple times and 20 sacks. That Aaron Donald is gone. He can still be disruptive, but he's not an every play worry. Pop Gun says Derek Carr is terrible. He sucks. Everyone knows it. Nobody knows that who actually studies NFL tape, and nobody believes that. Is he lower mid-tier? Sure. But when people say suck, they talk about guys who shouldn't be in the league. And I'm sorry, did you watch the Jets trot out Trevor Siemian as the starter this past week? Did you not watch Daniel Jones before his injury? Did you not watch Mac Jones, who ended up getting benched? I mean, look, I don't think Derek Carr is a top guy, but we've also got to stop with this whole, like, he's so terrible, we should just trash him as well. Because we talked about this. Like, there are a lot of guys in this league that I would rather have Derek Carr than. I would much rather have Derek Carr than Ryan Tannehill. I'd much rather have Derek Carr than Joe Flacco, who just threw 3 interceptions for Cleveland, but they did manage to win the games, and shout out for that, I guess. I'd rather have him than Tyson Baggett, P.J. Walker, Bailey Zapp, who replaced an even worse Mac Jones. I'd rather have him than Drew Lock. I'd rather have him than Taylor Heineke, than Desmond Ridder, than Aiden O'Connell, than Kenny Pickett, than Mac Jones, than Daniel Jones, than Zach Wilson. Is he good? Well, good implies he's a top 10 guy. No. We've also got to be like, come on, guys. Y'all got to look around the league and see that there truly is worse out there, even if you don't have good here. You're just stuck in, like, how I've been describing it is you're stuck in quarterback purgatory, right? You're not good enough to go to heaven, but you're not bad enough to go to hell. You're not in quarterback hell. You're not in quarterback heaven. You're just in quarterback purgatory. But trust me, there's worse out there, and you don't want worse. You don't want worse. Worse is scary. Panthers just released Justin Houston. Should the Saints go after him? I don't see how much Houston really fits this team, but I'll take any pass rush I can find. So, sure, Justin Houston, come on down. But realistically, no. If they were going to go after somebody, I wish they would have gone after a guy like Derek Barnett when he was on the waiver wire. But Justin Houston, who is 34 years old and has half a sack this season and hasn't really contributed even in his pass rush role, I think is done. Now, shout out to him because he's going to end his career with 112 sacks. And just like Cameron Jordan, I think he has a legitimate argument to make the Hall of Fame. Maybe not as a first balloter, but a legitimate Hall of Fame type of a guy. But yeah. Age affects great players most about taking away their consistency. They can be great any given week, but they can't do it every week anymore. Correct. The Rams are the best team that the Saints have faced this season. That I do not agree with at all. But I understand where you're coming from. They win this game, they have a shot, even though I think Tampa's to lose. I do not think this is the best team that the New Orleans Saints have faced. But I do understand where you're coming from. I think the best team the New Orleans Saints have faced is either the Detroit Lions or the Jacksonville Jaguars. Those are the best teams that NOLA has faced. I really hope that Jacksonville just curb stomps the ever-loving crap out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. LA is a good team, but not a great team. Jacksonville can be a great team. Hell, Indy could even be a great team. They're close to it. Houston could be a great team, just probably not this year. Like Houston's 8-6, but next year, depending on what they do in the offseason, Houston is going to be one of the teams that I look at possibly being a Super Bowl contender. I don't think the Rams are that good, but the Rams are a good team who have not played as well as they could have this year. The Rams have definitely not played as well as many expected. But I do think that the Saints can win. Again, they proved a lot in this past game. So, this past week, we shall wait and see how it plays out. Let's get some score predictions in, though. I'm very curious to see what people say because people were very adamant that we were going to lose. Very, very adamant that we were going to lose to the New York Giants. What do people say now? After seeing the Giants game, after seeing a win, what do fans think now? Been in Houston 7 years now. The energy out here is different. I love that M-Dot. Houston and Detroit are the two teams that I'm rooting for the most. So, really sour about the Rams still. I still want to kick them out the playoff contention. Same. King Troll says 21-17 Rams. TJ says 21-17 Rams because the Saints are inconsistent. Very fair. Giovanni says 28-17 Rams and a win for the Saints. Or say it's 28-17 win for the Saints. Here for it. DJ Twigger, who dat? Good to see you. Appreciate you coming on through. Always love you. Always giving you the love. So appreciate you swinging on through, my good old friend. 24 Saints, 20 Rams from Mr. Don. Keeping it close. Okay. I'll say this. I think that the Rams, the biggest thing with the Rams is how well can they handle the Saints secondary, which truly is playing as one of the best units in the entire NFL. And I say that in the most sincere way possible. This secondary is playing freaking crazy good, even without their best secondary player. If the defensive line can match that energy, you're going to see a lot of really good things. I believe the Saints will come close, but fall 27-23. That's fine. The biggest thing for me this weekend is if the Saints lose, you got to have Tampa lose. And I said it a couple weeks ago. The biggest game for the Saints left on the calendar is Week 17 against Tampa. That doesn't mean I'm trying to discount playing Atlanta because you absolutely need to win against Atlanta, and you're going to be playing Atlanta at home. You've got to win at home. But all that said, yes, I do think the New Orleans Saints can win this game. And I'm going to pick them to win this game 27-24 in a very close one. But this could easily go either way. And if you're curious, because who isn't curious, the Los Angeles Rams, home 4-3, away 3-4. Now, if you're curious how that translates to the New Orleans Saints are 3-4 away, 4-3 at home. So the Saints have actually played worse away and better at home. We'll see exactly how that ends up playing out. Yeah. Jermaine says Saints not beating the Rams. Have to wait and see. Stafford isn't mobile, though. Here's a question. If the chips fall the way they do and we win the division when we beat the Bucks, do we rest the starters the final week? Absolutely not, Jeffrey, because you're still trying to get better seating. But hey, appreciate all of y'all. Live long and prosper. It's how we do our Star Trek stuff, so I'm doing it here. Who dat? God bless. Appreciate every single one of you. We'll catch you on the next episode, which will be Thursday following the game. Deuces. I will try to get a film study out tomorrow. Depends on the timing. But we'll catch you on the next one. Appreciate every single one of you. Love you. Who dat? God bless. See you Thursday night.